All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Webinar Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And thank you for holding on. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty that I would love to blame on Webinar Jam, but it was my fault. So let's just start this with a bit of honesty. It was my fault. So thank you all so much for sticking with us. I'm excited to see everyone saying where they're from in the chat. Let's keep that going. So you may notice that I am joined by a guest today. So you have all tuned in to hear about crowdfunding with Kickstarter. And today we've got Oriana with us, and we're very excited to have her. She is the Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach at Kickstarter. So she knows all the ins and outs and everything that you need to know to have a beautiful and successful campaign. And I think, what else can I say about you, Oriana? Do you want me to share anything else?
I think that's great. I think that's what everybody wants to know.
Okay. I nailed it. All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen, which has Oriana's slides. So this is going to be a fun time for everybody. So meta, it looks like Inception. Okay. And we're going to get started. So Oriana, I will be your DJ. You just let me know when you need me to move around.
Amazing. Thank you, Chelsea, for having me, for Lulu, for bringing me over. I'm excited to talk to you guys. There's a lot of sort of vulnerability involved in doing a Kickstarter, so I will let you know. I've been doing these presentations for like 2.5 years, and this is the second time I'm doing it without reading notes. I'm actually like doing it off the cuff, which I understand is the way that one is meant to do a presentation. So thank you for being kind and gentle with me as I ramble, hopefully delightfully. I think I'll be talking for about a half hour, and then we get a video from Lorenzo Etherington, and then I'll take all your questions. So put them in the chat, jot them down, whatever. I'm excited to answer them. Keeping in mind, if your question is like extremely specific to your personal project, I might kindly say, let's take this offline, but I'm happy to talk to folks afterward. Looks like there's about 49 of you in this webinar, so I don't think that I will be deluged with comments afterward. Okay, so yes, I am the Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach at Kickstarter. My background is about half and half traditional book publishing and digital media. I've been a writer and an editor and a freelance proofreader for over 100 small presses all across the country, and I have also had a parallel career as an arts and culture journalist. So those are the skills I bring with me to this role. Chelsea, if you'll take me to the next slide, I will get started. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, starting all the way at the beginning, what makes Kickstarter unique. Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform that people use to bring creative projects to life. We're the only crowdfunding platform that is specifically designed for creative work, so you will never have to worry that your campaign is going to appear next to somebody crowdfunding medical bills for their grandmother's surgery or investment funding for their new startup. Everything on Kickstarter is about creativity. It all comes back to that. Because we are so dedicated to that mission, Kickstarter reincorporated about 5 years ago as a public benefit corporation. That is a legal charter that requires us to consider our impact on society with everything we do, not just on shareholders, stockholders, things like that. Kickstarter can never be coerced to chase profits at the expense of our mission, which is, again, bringing creative projects to life. It's also a really progressive company. When we had an office to go to, everything was compostable. We have all sorts of policies related to like progressive politics, charitable donations, advocacy for the arts, things like that. And the other thing that sets us apart from all the other crowdfunding platforms is that our model is all or nothing. That means if you set out to raise $10,000 and you only raise $4,000, you get none dollars, nothing. There is actually, people kind of think that that's scary, but Kickstarter was designed that way to benefit creative people. The idea is that you need to do some work to figure out what it is that you want to do and how much that's really going to cost you. And if you do that research and you decide that you can't publish this book for less than $10,000. If you then do a campaign, make a bunch of promises, offer a bunch of rewards, and you only get half that money, you're actually in a really rough spot. You either have to self-fund the rest of it, you would make an inferior product, possibly like not even be able to complete the project at all. And that's bad. It's a bad look for you, for all your backers. So it was really designed to protect artists and to make sure nobody's trying to bring their project to life with an incomplete budget. And actually the way things have sort of evolved, the tangible urgency of that all or nothing structure really helps propel campaigns kind of to and often far beyond their funding goals. So we find that it's actually good all around. Those are the things I have on this slide. Chelsea, if you will move me along. Oh, so right. I was just going to give a quick little snapshot about where things are. So Kickstarters, we just turned 12 years old. In that, there has always been a Kickstarter publishing category. And in the last 12 years, there have been 54,000 projects launched in Kickstarter publishing with $220 million pledged to those projects. And then on the next slide, I've got comics, which I should have, it was not always its own category. I forget what year it got broken out. But since however long that's been, 19,000 projects launched, $146 million pledged. So there's a lot going on here. On the next one, please, Chelsea. How are books and comics doing on Kickstarter? The answer is wildly well. It is, it still feels a little weird to talk about like good news out of like the toxic horror show that was 2020, but it actually turned out to be Kickstarter's best year ever for comics and publishing, and also our games category. Publishing and comics each raised $10 million more in 2019 than, or in 2020 than in 2019, which was the previous best year ever. And these trends have carried on into this year. We're still far above our averages in launched projects, successful projects, money raised per project. Well, I guess I kind of reversed these, but yeah, last November was when publishing crossed our $200 million pledged mark, and the current success rate in both categories is really high. Our site average hovers around just under 40%. So both publishing and comics are far below, and comics is almost double the success rate in the site as a whole. So it's a pretty good time to be doing publishing and comics on Kickstarter. I'll take the next slide. So what are the reasons that you might do a literary crowdfunding campaign? I'm going to do some more. There's like a roaring. Is that?
Yes, I'm putting my headphones in. I'm sorry. It looks like a very loud truck went by.
I'm jealous of your outdoor setup, by the way.
It is nice. It's nice. Sorry about that.
I'm just like looking longingly out my window. I don't have nature all around me. Okay, right. So benefits of literary crowdfunding. A Kickstarter structure, it lets you tell the story of your creative work more than just reading a blurb on the back of your book or on a Goodreads page. You can really talk to your audience about what brought you to this work, why you're doing it, why it's exciting for you and will be exciting for them. A well-run Kickstarter kind of runs like a marketing campaign. It can really help you build your fan base, connect directly with your readers and supporters of all kinds. You're going to spend 30 days sort of shouting from the rooftops, both at the audience that you have and the audience that you want. So it can really help you amass those supporters who are going to be like the earliest adopters and the most excited participants in your creative journey and in your work. You can use the campaign to sell pre-orders, which is, in a sense, instead of like a traditional publishing model with a profit and loss form, and you have to like guess how many copies you might sell and print them at a deficit and hope that you eventually make the money back. No, this way you get all the money up front before you even start. So you know what kind of book you can make, what sort of bells and whistles the physical book can have. You can also use the campaigns if you're a serial creator to sell off your backlist. We've got our newest Kickstarter feature is add-ons. So you can use your previously published books is in bundles and in add-ons. So anybody who's come to back this book, maybe this is volume 3, you can make sure everybody's got a complete set of volumes 1 and 2. Maybe this is a new series you're you're writing, and you can share with people things you've done before. And you can use Kickstarter to create something unique that's kind of like outside of your traditional things that you might be doing. Again, you can do something really ambitious that's going to cost more money, that you're going to really need to have that money up front. You can do something that's, you know, adjacent to your creative work. We see a lot of people crowdfunding plushies or enamel pins or tarot card decks that are like thematically aligned with the stories that they write. You can create an anthology. You can bring all your friends and, you know, other writers who also write vampire erotica or literary detective novels, and you can create something totally different, exactly the way you want it. Yeah, those are the things I have to say on this slide. Thank you. So before you start the campaign, you're going to want to be building your community. Everybody thinks about the funding side of crowdfunding. Not everybody thinks about the crowd. How you assemble your crowd is going to be the most critical predictor of your crowdfunding success. So you want to start with the platform where you're the strongest. If you are terrific on Twitter, don't feel like you need to make a TikTok just to eventually promote your Kickstarter campaign. You want to find creators with common interests. So if there's Facebook groups for paranormal romance writers, join them. If there are Instagrams that, you know, for the other people who are doing queer comics, you want to find where are these people, where are your readers, where are the other creators who are doing things similar to yours. You want to share your work where you can. Always keeping in mind, giving away your work for free should not be done lightly. You want to make sure that you're giving people enough so that they can understand what you do and get excited about it, not so much that you're getting into that why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free sort of situation. And no matter what you do, you want to start collecting email addresses so you can keep in touch. That could look like an email capture on your website. That could look like a Substack, MailChimp, Tiny Letter, or Ghost newsletter. Anything that you can do to be amassing these lists, because emails are going to be your most potent tool when you're promoting your Kickstarter campaign. And use those emails, you know, send people things regularly that talk about what you're doing, what they're doing, what's happening in the world of your creative work. Don't just save them and only use it for self-promotion. Really develop that community and that sort of like rapport with your supporters and your audience so that they're going to be really excited to hear from you. Yeah, that's my community building slide. So then once you have a voracious community that is so excited about your work and can't wait to hear about this campaign that you're running, here's how you're going to start putting it together. The first thing you need to decide is your funding goal. I talked about this at the beginning, but you're going to want to think about both what you need and what you can get. So price out everything. Get estimates on trim size, paper quality. This is a Lulu webinar. People here know about how to make a book, but also you're going to want to think about your shipping costs, your rewards. Are you making extra things? What are they going to cost? Can you make many of your rewards flat enough that you can slip them into the book itself, like postcards and bookmarks and small prints, so as not to boost yourself out of media rate shipping? If you're going to produce stuff like swag, make sure you know what it looks like to actually get that stuff made, designed, produced, and shipped. So once you understand what your funding goal needs to be to do the project that you want, now you need to think about what you can get. The average backing amount all across Kickstarter is $25. So if you say you want to raise 10 grand, I forget what the math on that is, but I'm pretty sure that it's 400 backers at $25. So if that feels well within reach based on all of the community development work that you've done, all those email addresses that you've carefully collected, your platforms on various social channels, if 400 backers seems doable, let's go, get it done. If not, if it seems kind of out of step with what you think your reach is, then maybe you're going to want to go back to step one, which was building more community. Maybe you're going to want to scale down the project, only fund one element of it with more to come later. Think about how you can make those numbers kind of come together, and then you know that you've chosen the right funding goal. For the campaign itself, it's pretty much a video, a story, and some rewards. For Kickstarter, a project video should be basically a minute long, maybe two if you've got a whole lot to say, but we do see that people stop watching after about a minute. So you just want to think of it as a teaser. It should be short, bright, compelling, fun. It's just going to get people in to like excited to read your story and hear more about what you're doing. If you are going to be like doing specific filming for a video, you probably want to see if you can get additional video assets that you can deploy during the campaign and beyond out in the world. You can record yourself saying thank you for getting us to 50% funded, hooray, we've reached our goal, any kind of other video type assets that will be helpful to you. Go ahead and amass those once you've got those cameras rolling. The story section is where you really tell it all. This is where you can get into all of the details and nuances of who you are and why you're doing this project and what makes it special and what makes it really exciting. The tone you want to take is happy, thrilled, exciting. You are embarking on a creative journey and inviting everyone to join you. So that's, you know, really go wild with your story. Talk about where you are in the process. Be really clear. You know, is the whole book written? Designed, and you just need to like press the button to send it to the printer? Are you still in the drafting stage? Like, where are you in the process? So your backers understand how long of a time frame they're looking at for completion and how they're helping you get there. Look at lots of other campaigns in the same category or subcategory that you'll be working in. See how other people talk about their work. That's kind of the best way to see what has worked well and then adapt it directly to your project. Then we get into the rewards, which to my mind is sort of, it's what makes this kind of fundraising like uniquely compelling, because again, you're not asking people for money. You're inviting them into the world of your creative work and giving them something in return. So the rewards can obviously start with a book tier. You'll want most likely a digital book and a physical book. Maybe you'll have a deluxe hardcover edition. Maybe you'll get crazy and have one with French flaps and color inserts and all sorts of like, you know, fancy bookmarks and gilt edge. Whatever you want to make, you can do it, just like once you figured out what you're budgeting. But rewards can go really beyond that. I talked a little bit about swag type items. Enamel pins are always incredibly popular on Kickstarter. Stickers, bookmarks, postcards, things like that. And then you can also think about digital rewards and things that are going to be less onerous to produce and ship. I love seeing a playlist of songs that inspired you while you were writing, a reading list of other books that, you know, really like touch your heart or like feel connected. You are also a social media expert. You can give away a couple hours of social media counseling. If you're an editor, you can offer some editorial tips. Think about the people in your community. You know, if you're writing a romance novel, if you know 5 other people who already have romance novels, maybe they'll kick you a couple of copies that you can give away, you know, signed copies of. If you know someone who knits beautiful scarves, maybe they'll contribute a scarf or two. Really bring together the people in your community and think about what your readers will be excited by and will make them want to participate. Again, always copy other people's work. Look at other campaigns, look at what rewards, not only what rewards they have, but you can see on a campaign which rewards have backers. So check which ones like nobody's that interested in and which ones are, you know, dozens and dozens of people super stoked for, and then see how you can sort of like make that work with your own process. Whew. Okay, I think there's 2 more slides. I forget. Promotion. This is the running of the campaign. You've now designed your most perfect, beautiful campaign. How are you going to make sure that everybody knows about it? You are going to start with your inner circle. My uncle has called this the bar mitzvah crowd. So, you know, your parents, your best friend, your college roommate, all of the people who care so much about you that they are ready to support anything that you do. You want to hit them up first, maybe in advance, but definitely the moment you launch, because those are the people who are going to back you the earliest. And it'll help you have a really strong start. That way, once your campaign starts growing and getting beyond the bar mitzvah crowd, it will already have some traction and look exciting. So build outward from there. Think about your colleagues, think about people in your writing group, all of those emails that those lists that you've built and those communities that you found your way into. Start working your way out, telling everybody about what you're doing. You want to think before you launch about who you're going to email, how often, what you're going to say. You probably want to pre-write some of those emails, some of those things because that will just like make your life so much easier while the campaign is in motion. Beyond email and newsletters, social media is obviously going to play a big part in any crowdfunding campaign. I said this earlier, but don't feel like you have to like have a presence on every single platform just to promote your Kickstarter campaign. That will feel inauthentic and bad. But you do want to think about which platforms work for you and how they can be parlayed into campaign promotion. Instagram, for example, doesn't let you use links. Facebook has radically changed their algorithms to deprioritize all funding requests. So figuring out ways that you're going to kind of find your way through those strange waters. And again, any of that stuff that you can write in advance is really going to make your life so much easier while the campaign is running. No matter how good of a job you've done at building your audience, your individual audience is always ultimately finite. So you want to think about who will be your amplifiers and your signal boosters. Are there prominent people who write similar books to you? Are there great podcasts or fan fiction sites or things like this where like other people, the kinds of readers that you're hoping to amass, congregate? Talk to people about how you can participate. Was anybody going to give you some press? Is anybody going to invite you onto their podcast? Those are the ways that you sort of like build these ripples outward and outward. And then finally, there's paid marketing. We don't get at Kickstarter too much into this. Obviously, we know that it exists. Obviously, we understand that once a creator launches a campaign, they will probably be inundated by people offering to, for a small fee, do all the work for them. We would advise you to approach any of those interactions with a healthy degree of skepticism. Obviously, you can pay anyone to do anything for you on the internet, and results may vary. There are some companies that we trust, BackerKit, we do a lot. We definitely think that their services are good. They are also not cheap. There's definitely going to be an element of getting what you pay for. And, you know, I think from what I hear from my creators, stuff like boosted posts on Facebook, on Instagram, in the book categories, it's pretty tough to get a good ROI, which is return on investment, in that sort of, in an amateur way. People are just not really looking at Facebook ads for books. If you work with a professional marketing company, we do see some of them really getting tremendous results, but then they're taking a big cut of everything that they're bringing in for you. So it's, you know, a decision that each creator has to make for themselves. Respect either way, but just like really know what you're getting into before you give away your login and a bunch of money for dubious kinds of results. I think I have one more slide. Or maybe
let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out what's next. No, I'm done. Oh, that's it. 12:28. I was like just about a half an hour. Like,
oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, so that's me, Oriana BKLYN, on Twitter and Instagram. I am really excited to see this video from Lorenzo, and then to take all of your burning questions.
Yes, Oriana, thank you so much. You've overcome so many challenges to give this presentation today. Audio, loud cars, me doing your slides. So thank you so much. That was a lot for me to think about that I hadn't really considered before in approaching a campaign. And so, as Oriana said, one of our very own, Lorenzo Etherington, who is a Lulu author, as well as the king of Kickstarter, who's a tremendous Kickstarter, has shared some insight with us. And so I think that might be helpful today. So Oriana went through so much about how to build a campaign and best practices. So now I will share with you this video and give you some context for what she spoke of, and kind of give you some illustrations of what Lorenzo has done for his Kickstarters. All right, so Oriana, you mentioned the videos and doing a really short clip, and I think that's a great tip. And you know, our attention spans seem to get shorter and shorter. So Lorenzo, because of the tier he's at with his Kickstarter-ing, this video really encompasses all of the projects he's done before. So you can see that this is how to think when you draw at number 4. Lorenzo, this is his 4th Kickstarter that he's done. I think he holds some sort of record in the Kickstarter ether or world about his success that he's had. But you can see here before I start playing it at the bottom of the screen that his goal was £1,000 and he just smashed it. So he's got a ton of backers, has really done a good job for his community and building that out. So I just want to play his video that he used on his page so that we can see what this looks like in real life. All right, so you can see he is doing the most. You certainly don't have to do all of that, but Lorenzo has done so many of these Kickstarters, and as Oriana mentioned, you know, some of his rewards are now some of his backlist of the books that he's created. And the first three in the collection, his deluxe collections, those huge tomes that he's made for learning how to draw and illustrate, those are his Lulu books. So he does in tandem creating these really high quality books with Lulu, and then complements those with some other books that have you know, different variants, and one has 3D stuff that's really cool. So he's done a great job of creating these things, knowing what his audience wants, and then providing that. So the next thing that I've got for you is actually Lorenzo. So he was kind enough to share his 5 tips for creating a Kickstarter campaign and making sure that it's successful. So I'm going to play this. I think it's about 3 minutes long. So we'll listen to Lorenzo and his pro tips here. And then after that, we will open it up for questions.
Hi there. I'm artist and author Lorenzo Etherington, and I'm here today to give you some tips on how to use Kickstarter. If you don't know anything about me, I created the series How to Think When You Draw, which is a huge free online encyclopedia of drawing tutorials that's available for everyone forever. But I also created a series of books, the How to Think When You Draw books, here they are, on Kickstarter, which became the world's most successful art books of all time on that platform. And I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to run the best Kickstarter you possibly can. Tip number 1 is build something you love. This is the most important part of the whole process. You've got to really care about what you're building. I know that sounds trite, but it's true, and it's especially useful for tip number 2. And tip number 2 is put as many hours into your project as you possibly can. Far more hours than you probably think it's worth. Okay, this is the way to do it. And the reason being that the reason why tip 1 is so important is that it will help you with stage number 2. It will help you stick at it, because it will be difficult and it's very hard work, especially when you're building something before you've been paid for it. But by sticking at it, you will end up, and putting those extra hours in, you will end up crafting something which is above and beyond what most other people will bother to do. And that's really important, because it is quite a competitive place, Kickstarter, and so you really want to make the very best product you can and put as many hours of love and attention as you can into what you're building. Tip number 3 is that your Kickstarter campaign begins way before it launches. You have to start thinking about it at least 6 months, better yet 12 months out, thinking about how you can make useful, shareable content around your product, whatever it is, book or film or comic or game or whatever, that people will share and that is associated with your title and your upcoming Kickstarter campaign without it being a straight advert for it. Useful content that helps people. It's so good for building goodwill around what you're doing. Number 4, customer service. Possibly the most important part of the whole process, the most boring sounding part of the process. But I would say if you're running a Kickstarter, you need to aim to answer every single message you get within 36 hours, without exception. You've got to think that when people back your project, a lot of the time their first experience of interacting with you is that part of the process when they've pledged and then they're waiting for the products and they might have a question, and if you take ages to answer it or you don't give them a polite and full answer, it really impacts badly and it really taints what you've worked so hard to build. And number 5, the thing by which I stand almost above all others, is deliver on time. It's so important. Again, it's just like customer service. If you've said you're going to deliver by this month of this year, deliver by then. Move everything you can to make sure you make that happen. Because if you then come back to Kickstarter again, once again, you've built a tremendous amount of goodwill. It's incredibly powerful and positive, and it will get people to come back because they know you really respect them as customers and you take delivering this product you've really cared for to them very seriously. Okay, I hope that's practical advice that really helps. And yeah, good luck with all your projects.
without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and we will go to questions. So as you are putting those in, I can go ahead and start it off. So Oriana, tell me, what do you think? You talked about some of the best practices for creating a Kickstarter campaign, but what are some of the pitfalls you see people kind of hit, or maybe some of the most common suspects that might be why your campaign is not successful?
Well, so some pitfalls, I think, even though we are all writers, we are not always terrific at describing our work. So I think I always recommend starting a campaign with like a TLDR, just like a 2-sentence description that really synthesizes exactly what you're doing, because everyone's brains are addled from the internet. You want to make sure that no matter what, whoever lands on your page will absolutely get it right away as soon as they get there. Other pitfalls, I think, overestimating your reach and your abilities, not really like making sure that you've locked in your promotional plan before you start. But I will share, this is my favorite statistic about Kickstarter. I mentioned earlier, if you average all the campaigns in all the categories, the success rate for running a project on our site is like 38%. But if you only look at projects that have at least 25 backers, the success rate in all categories leaps to almost 80%. So that tells me, if you know what you're doing, if you're running your campaign with some intention, if you've planned it well, and if you can get a little bit beyond that bar mitzvah crowd, your chances of success are actually really high.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. So everyone feel encouraged. So Kelly asked, in what way would you say that publishing Kickstarter campaigns differ from film or other media, if any?
Well, I think publishing is a really good fit for Kickstarter because you're creating a tangible object that, you know, people are accustomed to paying money for and kind of like feels like it makes sense. I actually started a Kickstarter leading the journalism category, and it's a very different proposition when you're creating something less tangible like digital media, and I think films can feel similar. So that's one thing. You are, you know, for better or for worse, people think that digital media should be free, but understand that books should cost money. So it's a little easier to convince them to buy your book on Kickstarter. That's one way that they differ. Backer behavior also differs in various categories across our site. I don't actually know that much about what goes on in the film category, but just from doing both comics and publishing, comics has a lot more casual browsers. People just go into Kickstarter to see what's up than you see in publishing. So that means that it's a little easier in comics. You might capture a lot more just like random folks, but it's also harder because there's more competition for those same eyeballs. Like, I mean, with vast variation, comics are comics, whereas, you know, our publishing category includes everything from audiobooks to literary museums to, you know, every kind of novel or memoir under the sun. And if somebody, just because somebody is interested in like this publishing project, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be so keen on these other ones. So those are some differences.
Perfect. And so Emily is asking, what price bracket is usually the best for a book or collection? And I'm assuming what you're asking is maybe your fundraising goal, maybe? So let's try that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that most individuals who are kind of just starting out are probably going to want to aim between like 5 and maybe 15,000. Again, knowing nothing about you, Emily, or everyone's individual scenarios and circumstances and reach and outreach and, you know, notoriety and things like that. But yeah, I would say that also kind of feels commensurate with, you know, a few hundred copy print run. Yeah, so I would say for most first-time campaigns, that's where I tend to see people starting, like 5 to 15.
Yes, it was the fundraising goal. Emily, I read your mind. So let me ask you, Oriana, is there a minimum like fundraising goal that Kickstarter has? So you can kind of come in if you only needed, you know, I don't know, $500 to fund your project. Is that okay? Is that
totally? Okay? Yeah, totally okay. You can fund as much or as little as you want. You can also run your campaign for anything from 1 day to I think 60, maybe even 90. But like, please don't do that. Do not run a 90-day campaign. You will ruin your life. We really think 30 days, approximately 4 weeks is kind of the sweet spot. Most of your action you're going to see in the first week and the last week. That middle part is just to give you time and space to sort of develop all of your outreach, your press, your promotion, things like that. But yeah, much longer than that, donor fatigue will set in. You will be exhausted. You will be tired of hearing yourself talk about your project. So yeah.
Excellent. Good to know. Yeah. Don't get discouraged. Don't wear yourself out trying to raise that money. All right. So Sue is asking, and thank you, Emily. Sue is asking, what would be the best way to figure out your target audience?
Well, golly, I mean, I think you think about what you're writing and who would want to read it. When in traditional publishing, if you do a book proposal, there's a section called comp titles where you think about what other books exist that are similar to yours, whether they're similar in place or setting or genre or like type of writing. So that's something to think about. Figure out where it's of course easier. I gave some like extremely niche examples: vampire erotica and paranormal romance and Western set on the moon. Those are kind of like, it's a little clearer to figure out what kind of readers you might have. But I mean, of course, every book is its own perfect, unique, and special snowflake, but also there's probably a lot of other books out in the world that could be seen to have similarities. So I would use that to sort of identify. When I published a book, actually traditionally 5 or 6 years ago, and when I was doing my book proposal, there was still Barnes and Noble. So I went to one and just looked at all the other books to see, where I thought mine would fit in size, in theme, in genre. So do whatever version of that you can on the internet or your local independent bookstore. Please do that instead.
Yes, that's a great tip. And Sue, a shameless plug, we have an audience persona or reader persona video on YouTube you can check out. But to Oriana's point, think about who's your book for and who's interested in that and where do they hang out? Where do they get their news? What communities are they involved in? And then kind of pull that thread and see where it takes you. So thank you, Sue. Arlen says, can you use Kickstarter for an already published book to crowdfund for costs related to going to book fairs, transportation, to speaking events, etc.?
Yeah, no, you actually couldn't use it that way. I mean, at the beginning, I was talking about how Kickstarter is to bring a creative thing to life. You could kickstart, your new book and maybe have some like associated costs for marketing, but in the same way that with a business, you can't kickstart like operating expenses. It has to really be something somewhat tangibly, or at least discrete, that you are like making exist in the world that did not exist before.
Oh, that's a great point. But I guess, as you said, the reward tiers, that can be your backlist and projects that you've already worked on, as you saw, but did not hear Lorenzo show.
You could kickstart a book tour. If that, that might be a way that you could sort of do that. I guess that would sort of be funding your flights and hotels, but like creating a thing, this tour that didn't exist before. So think about it like that.
Very interesting and good point. Good question. So next we've got a question from Alex, and Alex, gold star to you. You win the day because you posted the link to Lorenzo's Kickstarting page. So thank you so much for doing that. You get a free pass to our next webinar. How about that? Okay, so Alex is asking, do you recommend speaking to people who've run successful Kickstarter campaigns in different categories, or is books and comics too different?
Oh, well, I do not recommend speaking to people in games and being like, I'm going to do the same thing with my book, because they are wildly different and your experience will be different. The backer community is completely different. Its relationship with Kickstarter. I definitely recommend talking to people who have crowdfunded before, but I think you're probably going to get the best advice if you talk to people who are doing similar projects to what you're doing. And, even within books, like if you are, doing your first comic, talking to a wonderful person like Lorenzo Etherington might give you some unreasonable expectations for what's going to be possible for you. So also try to think about people who are at a similar place in their creative journey when you have those conversations.
Perfect. So Edward is asking, this one looks like it's to do with revenue. So can you get revenue paid out for a PayPal account, or is it sent via check? So his maybe, I don't know if this is getting into the technical offline scenario, but I think the bigger question is just when you are receiving your money from Kickstarter, how does that get paid out?
Yeah, so what do I know about this? You cannot use PayPal and you can't get a check at all. You have to have a bank account connected, and that's our payment processor is Stripe. They are the ones who handle ID verification, bank accounts, things like that. So yes, for both to both be a creator or a backer, you do need a credit card and or a bank account. It can't be done with checks or PayPal or other money systems.
Okay, good to know. All right, so Marie is asking, does Kickstarter only work in the US or English-speaking places? How about France?
Yeah, Kickstarter's got, so you can back a project from anywhere in the world. You can create a project from anywhere in the world where you can have a Stripe sanctioned bank account. We are open, you'd think I would know. We're open in dozens of countries. We are certainly open in France, and there's a community in France for Kickstarter. We're not open in India, in like Cuba, Iran, places like that. But certainly our biggest community is the US, second biggest is the UK, and then sort of Europe writ large, with Japan kind of coming up behind it. What was I going to say about that? Oh, different countries. France is every country is unique. But France, I have heard there are a lot of sort of homegrown crowdfunding outlets in France. So there's some people I think French people are like very proud of being French. And I hear that a lot of them prefer to use local companies than us coming in from America. I was going to say one other thing about that. Oh, our site is translated into 10 or 15 languages every day, definitely including French, Italian, Chinese, Japanese, German. I don't remember all the rest. I think I had one other point about that. Oh, well, so I've actually done a lot of webinars with international folks, and like one challenge, the idea of crowdfunding is not as familiar in every country as it is in the US. So certainly I've spoken to people in like, I think Greece, although Greece knows, but who have said, like, first I would have to explain the concept of crowdfunding, then I would have to explain what Kickstarter is, and then I would get around to explaining my project. And that's sort of like, are people still going to be listening by that point? So there certainly are like regional differences when you're promoting a campaign or deciding whether to do a campaign in all sorts of different countries. But you probably know France better than I do, assuming you're asking the question from there. So that would be some ways to investigate whether it's going to make sense for you.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never even thought that in other places they'd have to, I'd love money for this, but let me explain to you what that means for you to give me money. And that's a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that question, Marie. And the next one is from David, and he's asking, how much does it cost to use Kickstarter?
That's a great question. I should say that in my presentation. Kickstarter's fee is 5% of successful projects. If you set out to raise, 10 grand, you don't make it, you don't owe anybody any money. So it's only after your project succeeds, we take 5%. And Stripe, who I've discussed as our payment processor, they take between 3 and 4%. It's variable based on financial technical things. But anyway, you should budget 10% for fees, and then you will be more than covered. You'll have more than enough to offset those prices.
Okay, excellent. And Yvette is asking, and this might be a bit technical on the book side, but when in the campaign is the best time to create a Kickstarter? After your cover design, or after the whole book is done, or you're just waiting to print, or other? So I'm guessing, Yvette, for this campaign, the campaign is to fund the book, is what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do it at any point. It's a matter of when you want to balance having done enough so that your backers can kind of like trust and believe that you're going to be able to complete the whole thing, not having done so much that it seems like, why do you need money if you've already finished? It's just a question of like explaining where you are in the process, why this is the moment you've chosen to crowdfund, and sort of what your horizon and timeline is for getting everything done and books into people's hands.
Good question. All right. And Christopher is asking, how will Kickstarter promote campaigns within the Kickstarter community? Is there a way for donors to observe campaigns from a marquee or posting on an e-board?
I don't know what an e-board is. I will say Kickstarter, there's a lot of like AI discoverability built into the site. So when I browse Kickstarter, it will look different than for you based on the projects that I have previously backed and what kinds of categories I tend to like. We do a lot of newsletters. We do all sorts of, we've got all the social channels, things like that. So there's a lot of different kinds of ways that projects are surfaced to the backers who we think will like them the most. There's in kind of every Kickstarter email communication, there's, a couple of projects at the bottom that we think if you, subscribe to this newsletter, you'll also like this thing. If you back this project, you'll also like these others. If you spent this amount of time in this category on the site, I mean, it's the internet, so all sorts of data is being not collected. I know that we actually don't keep a lot of data because of GDPR and things like that, but synthesized into AI to try to make your experience more exciting and try to help you find the projects we think you'll.
Yeah. So do you think the best way to approach, as you are starting your Kickstarter campaign, when you think about marketing it, you need to take the lead on that? You don't want to rely on Kickstarter to be amplifying your message. And that would go back to your slide about starting with the bar mitzvah crowd and then going out to get some more. So yeah, that's a great question, Christopher. And I would, it's very similar to publishing a book on Lulu. You as the creator, you get out and shout it from the rooftops. You want to be the number one person championing that project. So thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, sorry. In the Kickstarter dashboard, there's actually a pie chart that shows you how much of your backings, what percent is coming from Kickstarter's efforts and what percent is coming from your efforts. This gets into a more detailed conversation about backer behavior, but in a category like games, you're looking at like 70-80% is coming from the Kickstarter community. In comics, it's usually maybe more like 30 to 40%, and in publishing, it's about 15 to 20. So don't rely on that. As Chelsea said, you should be assuming that most of the effort should start with you, but you will almost certainly bring in enough just by being on Kickstarter, at least to offset the Kickstarter fees that you'll be paying.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. So Kelly is coming back with, we've got another region for you. What about the Caribbean?
Yes. Well, yes. I mean,
what about it?
I hear it's nice this time of year. No, I don't. Yes, you can certainly. I don't. If you're asking what do people in the Caribbean think about crowdfunding, I do not know. I have not done a detailed study, but for sure we see projects coming out of the Caribbean and we see backers coming from the Caribbean. Yes.
Excellent. Good to know. Good to know. I'm a fan of the Caribbean. That's great. All right. So we've got a couple minutes left. So I'm just going to do a last call for questions. And this one we sort of touched on a bit earlier, but I published a financial journal in February 2021. Can I use Kickstarter to launch a campaign to hold events to use the journal and teach about managing your money?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, an event is a creative thing that you're bringing to life. It sounds like you could maybe also crowdfund a study guide, companion edition, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably the best I should say in a public forum. If you are getting into it, you can reach out to me, or also our trust and safety and customer support teams will be, when you're in the build process, they'll be accessible there. So you can ask those kinds of questions as you're putting things together.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Is there a good FAQs page for publishing and comics that everyone can check out, or a good URL for that?
I will post. We have a creator tips page for publishing, which includes comics and journalism. Here, can I set sticky message? Is that gonna?
Yeah.
Oh,
let's do it. Let's see what happens.
It doesn't want to let me post it, actually.
It's not letting you. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's Kickstarter.com/creators/publishing. It should be pretty easy.
Perfect. All right, let's see. Alex is saying, please check us out at Big Story Pod. I'll just give that a shout out because you helped me out earlier. We interview lots of Kickstarter comic creators. Well, that's exciting. Check that out. All right, everyone. I don't see any other questions coming through. So I'll talk slowly just for a second to see if that's it. Okay. All right. So Oriana, thank you again. Thank you everyone for coming on this ride with us today. It was exciting. It was touch and go. It was on the edge of your seat. So thanks everyone for hanging out with us until the end. The recording will be sent out to everyone, and I will be posting those videos I tried to share of Lorenzo and didn't get to. So if you're here at this point, thanks so much. And one last question from Alex. Is there criteria for becoming a quote project we love?
Oh, I mean, yes, but it's not something that I can tell you in 30 seconds. Look on our Kickstarter. There's certain articles about the best way to get featured. Concentrate on making the best project that you can make. People get a little wrapped around the axle about projects we love. It's nice if you can get it, but it's for the sort of cream of the crop top most projects on the site. So you can still be extremely successful and happy whether or not Kickstarter tags your project with us.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. All right, Oriana, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone that tuned in has a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, wherever you are, or evening or morning, wherever, however time works. Oriana, thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone. We'll see.
It was delightful.